Mossy and Robbo with Eloise Wellings, winner of the ASICS Women's Half Marathon. Finishers coming across in the half marathon, key sub 2 hour mark, very critical for a lot of people. We're back on live aerial pictures of the lead men's group. Before we lose Rob de Castella, Deke, of course we know your passion and the project that's ever so close to your heart for the last 6 or 7 years, Indigenous Marathon project. And as always, you've got a number of your runners here, and I guess giving them an opportunity for a big city event ahead of when they will be running a marathon a bit later in the year.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this is our 6th year, and we've got another squad that are in training. That most of them have never done any running before, and this is their second training camp. Their first one was in May, and they ran a 10K on Mother's Day in Canberra, and they've in the last few weeks gone back to their homes and communities and done a bit more training, and they're lining up in the half marathon here. So this will be the longest run that any of them have ever done. We select them not based on running ability, but on their ability to inspire change and their motivation to push themselves to do that. And like one example is we've got this guy from Sydney, John, who was 170 kilos.
Extraordinary.
He looked around at his family, and all of his family have diabetes, and he lost his brother a couple of years ago to cancer, and he said, look, enough's enough, we've got to do something, we've got to change, and I want to be part of that change. And he put his hand up to run New York Marathon, never having done any running before, told all his family, and they all said, they laughed at him and said, you're an idiot. And he's down now from 170 kilos down to 134. We do regular assessments on them to see how they're going. And he's out there today running 21K at 134 kilos, on track to run the New York City Marathon in the 1st of November. And that's just an example of one of the many stories that we have. 43 graduates now have come through our program. We've got a couple who ran New York last year from Thursday Island up in the Torres Strait. They went back, they started running clubs, they put on running events, and they've brought 10 Thursday Islanders down to this running weekend. And we've got 2 of them running the marathon today. A group of them ran the half marathon, and others ran the 10K yesterday. So it's wonderful to see the impact that our program and our runners are having on their families and communities, because we've got to, as a nation, get to a point where enough's enough, and we've got to drive some change and support these incredible young Indigenous leaders to help them to change their lives and give a future to their families and communities.
And that doesn't happen organically. That's your program being proactive and enacting change and getting people in those communities to, as you say, in turn be agents for change and inspire.
Yeah, look, we have about 150 applicants every year, and we select a squad of between sort of 10 and 12 men and women, Aboriginal, Torres Strait Island, aged between 18 and 30. And as I said, they get selected not on running ability, but on their ability and motivation to drive change and be inspirational young leaders. And they maybe one day we'll see one of our graduates, or maybe one of the kids that they've inspired, being up here and tackling and pushing the Kenyan and the African dominance in distance running. We've got an incredible guy from a little community up in East Arnhem Land, up in the Northern Territory, a little community called Gapawayak. And Chris at the AIS, had never been on an athletic track before. He came out in training shoes and ran 25 seconds for 200 metres, and is out there with Peter Jacobs this morning.
Wow.
Peter's pacing him through this half marathon. So these guys have...
You might have a sprinter, not a distance runner there, 25 for 200.
You don't want to come into the last 200 metres with him in the marathon, do you?
Exactly.
But these guys never even knew that there was a sport or an activity such as these fun runs and half marathons and marathons. So to get them down here to something like the Gold Coast Airport Marathon and the weekend of running is just this incredible, mind-blowing experience. And they'll take back to their communities and families incredible stories, and they'll see, you know, young people, old people, big people, little people, all out there participating together, and hopefully they'll, you know, drive running events and running clubs, and we'll see people moving. But the big thing about running a marathon and doing any running is that when you finish, you just feel so proud of yourself. Every time you go out for a training run, it's hard, and when you come back, you know, you pat yourself on the back and you feel good about yourself. When you run your first marathon, that emotion is, you know, 10 times, 100 times. And that's what we are trying to do, is to give these young Indigenous men and women the self-belief, the personal pride, the confidence and the courage to step up and make a difference.
Look, I love what you have done and continue to do with the Indigenous Marathon Project, Dick. I know it's got a lot of support out there, a lot of goodwill, and the story is filtering through beyond Indigenous communities. So I say anyone can run a marathon, and this fellow John you've got, who's gone from 170 to 140 kilos and will run a New York Marathon. That is incredible. Thanks for joining us. It's always a privilege.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll watch the rest of this race, because we've still got an interesting lead pack of 6 or 7 runners with the 2 paces in there. So it bodes well. We've got a really strong pack.
This is a cracker of a race, and you know, just before I go, you know, sort of anyone watching this, you know, try to look at the runners and try to get a feel for their style and their technique. Forget about these 2 pacemakers; they'll be out of it in a sec. But look at the guys in the main bunch, and watch the way their form changes over that last 10k. You know, the race doesn't really start until halfway. The marathon doesn't start until 30k. It's all about how strong you can finish over that last 10k, and to see a big bunch of guys up there on this fast pace, you know, 15-minute plus through each of the 5Ks is a great pace. And if the conditions can hold out, there's such a big bunch up there that I think we're going to see a really super fast time. Like Troopy said before, if there was just 1 or 2 up there, the wheels can fall off and they can slow down. But having such a big bunch up there and having them looking pretty comfortable is an indication that this is going to be a pretty special race.
We just got some split stick, and we obviously like Lima, who is a big chance to win, but his 5k was 14:47, his 10k was 29:46, which means he was 14:59, he dropped 12 seconds, but through 15k he was 45:03, which means he's actually dropped 18 seconds within that 5k. So they did slow.
Yeah.
Kiwatich, that's just to the right, he's been off, he's been on, he's been off, he's been on. He's finally got himself back in. One of the Ethiopians has started to perish and drop off. So this between this 15 kilometre mark and 25 kilometre mark is where things are going to change quite drastically.
Yeah, it's a good point, Troopy, because you know the first 10k or so you want to be feeling pretty damn good. You know, you're about to run 42k, so 10k you should be pretty comfortable. This second stage from 10k through to halfway is really where you really start to settle into it, and if you're starting to struggle and you're starting to fall off at that you know sort of second quarter, then you really, it's not looking good. But the third quarter from halfway through to around about 30k is a really essential area if you're going to run a fast time. These guys can't afford to slow down through that third quarter of this marathon, and the last quarter is about the competition. You know, the last 10k is, you know, partly if the wheels fall off, then you're going to run a slow time. But if you're trying to win the race, that's when you need to be able to pick up the pace and finish strong. But the third quarter of anything you do is always mentally tough. So if these guys can hold it together and not drop off too much, and then maybe have something left over that last 10k, you know, we might see a good time. But if they keep on slowing and slowing and slowing, then you know, they could really struggle over that last bit.
Well, we just said that they were 15:18 through 10 to 15 kilometres. They will be coming up to the 20 kilometre mark in roughly around about 30 seconds. But Ian, just going to the women have gone through 15k, and it is Tanaka that's 52:16. She's still just under that 3:30 pace,
yep.
So still on around about 2:27, 2:28, and she's 20 seconds in front of Hashimoto.
So we could be seeing hopefully race records in the men's and women's events here. That would be absolutely wonderful. There is bonus prize money on offer for race records in the men's and women's race, as well as the $20,000 first prize for the winner of the Gold Coast Airport Marathon. What you're seeing on screen here is running through Hedges Avenue at Mermaid Beach, this sort of canyon, very narrow part of the course where the elite runners come into contact. We saw a balloon there going past Troopy. That, of course, signifies
There's 20K.
That's a pace group. So 20K, and we are ahead of race record pace with a good core group of runners together. So this is flat. This is a little bit shaded here. This will give them some respite from the heat and the sun, which will potentially come into play through the last 10 or 14 kilometres as they come back through Surfers Paradise, back through Southport, and then head north to Runaway Bay, where it is very exposed.
Yeah, well, I just got them coming through roughly at around about an hour and 25 seconds, which means that they're holding that 15, 18, 15, 20 pace that they ran from 10 to 15 and then from 15 back to 20. So the pace is still the same, even though it's a little bit slower than their first 10K, because we said most of the twists and turns are going to be between 10 and 15 and 15 and 20. So you can see a few have just started to drop off. This is where they're starting to get tired. They're coming up to the halfway mark. By the time they get to 25 kilometres, the road's open from that point. The camber of the road's perfect. You know, they're going to come up to 30K where the crowd's going to be at that start-finish area. And like I said, now we're going to actually see how the race is going to play out. Who's actually going to be a contender? I still like Lima. I think he looks really, really good. But anything can happen in this next sort of 5 to 8 kilometres.
So we've got a lead pack there with the pacemakers, but Limo, the 2014 winner, Mungara, Ruto is in there, so we've got 5 or 6 runners in there. Are we down to about 3 or 4, Troopy? It's a bit hard to see through that narrow effect there. We came through a drink station. Okay, so we've still got 7 runners. That is a very good sign. The Kenyans and Ethiopians there.
So officially 60-23 for Limo as he's come through that 20 kilometre mark. So they're hitting 3:05 pace. 3:05 kilometre pace equates to 2:10. You talked about before, maybe it was money in the bank. They've gone out at sub 2:6 pace. Now they're actually running 2:10 pace. I think they're going to probably get a little bit slower at some stage and be around that 2:11, 2:12 pace. But then you think of what they started out with, what they're actually going to be at, that's where it's going to mirror at that 2:08 to 2:10 official marathon time that they'll run.
And I guess the key factor will be how many guys have we got once we go through 30 kilometres. As much as there's bonus money on offer for race records, and that didn't seem to affect Limo last year, but if there's just one guy out on his own, as much as he's running scared or trying to run and build a lead then maintain a lead, ideally we really still want to see a core pack of 3, 4, 5 runners together as we go through 30 kilometres, and then the race begins. Then it becomes a race of tactics where the challenge for runners is to, well, when do I make the move? Who's got a kick? How am I feeling? Is it a case of trying to throw down the gauntlet to the others and throwing in a surge, trying to make a bit of a break sometime after 30 kilometres? So very interesting to see how that unfolds. But for the meantime, we are coming through the probably 21 kilometre mark. So I don't know if we're going to get a halfway split there, Troopy. If we're going to see a marker on the road, we'll keep an eye out for that.
They'll be coming up to it. I reckon they've got to be close. There we go. Here's the halfway mark. So 63.46 they've gone through. Kenneth Mungara, you can see he's just started to drop off a little bit. So he needs to... No, Kenneth is still there. It's a little dark to be able to see the screen completely.
Bit hard to pick through there. So Limo's times, yeah, so so dropping to about 3:10, 3:15 through that kilometre. Maybe adding a little bit for the extra 100 metres between 20K and 21.1. So, okay, I won't be thrown by that.
Yeah,
okay.
That's still around 3:05. So, you know, 63.46, obviously if you double it's going to work out to 2:07.30 pace.
Yep.
Now, like I said, this will be the deciding part in the race over the next 5 to 10 kilometres, whether they're still going to be able to hold this. Because they've started to get a little slower, it indicates to me that we're probably going to see something more in that high 2.8s to low 2.10 range at the minute.
Extraordinary. When you look at the splits for Dennis Cometto's world record in Berlin last year, you know, it started at sort of 14.45, 14.50, then got quicker. A few of the 5K splits through 20 to 30k were around 14:20, just extraordinary pace. Dennis Cometto's an amazing story, isn't he, Troopy? The fact that he was just a nobody, basically, just an everyday sort of guy who used to run around the villages of Iten and Eldoret in Kenya. Hooked up with Emmanuel Mutai, one of the legendary runners of Kenyan running. Saw the guy had a bit of potential, I think at the age of 21 or 22, and said, well, why don't you come and run with us? 5 years later, Dennis Cometto is running a world record, the first athlete to go under 2:03, 2:02.57 set last year. The splits are extraordinary. We won't be seeing anything like that here, but if we can see it still around sort of 15:10, 15:15 through to the next 30 kilometres, you'd still love to see those splits through to 35.
Correct. And look, that was done on the Berlin Marathon course, and, Berlin Marathon is just pancake flat.
And straight. That's the big difference as well. Very few twists and turns with Berlin.
Correct. And I mean, if you stepped on an acorn, you'd think you were going uphill. That's how flat that course is. And this, obviously, the guys have really, they attacked it really hard the first 10 kilometres. Now that we've actually got through a lot of this, this will be the interesting part. The weather's going to start to get warm now. They're going to be exposed a little bit more as they head out to Runaway Bay. So the hydration, the nutrition, all the things that they were doing in the early part of the race is where we see now whether that also aids them or whether that's actually going to inhibit them. So everyone still looks good. Rudo looks good. Obviously, I just said before that Ngara had dropped off and he's actually now got himself back on. So, like I said, it's hard to look at that right now and say who is going to definitively be your leader.
Yep.
But I guarantee in the next 5 kilometres, we're going to have a pretty good indication on who maybe 1 out of 2 or 3 is possibly going to take this victory.
You'd be a bit concerned with Mungara, wouldn't you, if he's had to expend that energy? There's something not quite right if he's had to slip back off the pace and then spend a few bickies to get back on. That really is not the ideal way to run. Some guys can do it, particularly the Africans are renowned for their surging capability, and certainly Mungara, even though he was a late comer to marathon running, should know his body and know tactics fairly well. He's run 2:7.28. He knows what it takes to run fast times and a time that is potentially a race record here on the Gold Coast. Bearing in mind our race record, 2:09.14. That was the first time set last year that we went under 2:10. So that was certainly a landmark for Gold Coast Airport Marathon. But we're a bit greedy here, Troopy. We don't want to just go sub 10. We want to go sub 2:9. Those barriers with each minute mark does take you into a new league and I guess a new level of world respect of runners around the world.
Well, to give people an indication of what 3 minutes per kilometre works out to just for 2.6, if you go down to your local athletics track and you try to run 1 lap of a 400-metre athletics track in 72 seconds, you then have to do that for another 105.5 laps to equate exactly what the marathon is. So do it for 1 and then realise that you still have
Come and talk to you after that, maybe?
These guys are obviously the best of the best. And,
yes.
The crowd that are sitting out there, a lot of the people will be very uneducated about marathon running and wouldn't really be able to comprehend how fast that is. But it's extremely fast. It'd be like hopping in your car and basically driving at 21 or 22 kilometres an hour and doing that for 42.195 kilometres. So there's
some
a great
people
way
struggle to
ride
ride a bike at that pace. That can be a challenge for many people.
Certainly. I don't know about the roundabout jumping on that, but...
So who's that? Ruto, who's jumped up on the roundabout there just to try and run that tangent. So we've come through
big fella.
22 kilometres, probably 23 kilometres. So this is about the point last year at which we saw Sila Limo make his decisive move. It will be interesting to see if he wants to have a crack there again as we come through Broadbeach. I'm not expecting him to go as early this year, given that the pace is as hot. It's probably just a matter of hanging on in that group, holding the pace, and see who's incapable of keeping the pace, and they will potentially drop off one by one.
Well, they're down to 7 now, and remember, 2 of those runners are actual pacemakers. So that actual lead pack is 5.
Yep.
We've gone from 12 to 8 to 6. And now we're down to 5. So again, as this race sort of starts to open up a little bit more, we're going to see probably 1 or 2 other guys drop off, and then we're going to get right into the business end. And sitting at the Garmin luncheon yesterday, Rob de Castella talked about that the marathon, it starts at 32 kilometres. When you are actually up against the wall and you're starting to fatigue, all of a sudden, that's when it all starts. So these guys are you know, they're getting to that point where the marathon really starts to become what we know it for, which is attrition.
And that is the extraordinary thing, isn't it? I mean, that is, as we notably talk about the wall, but that is the point at which it's not just a matter of surviving. That is where these guys have got to start racing. That is mind-boggling. You talk about the one-lap challenge for many people. Well, imagine holding that and potentially trying to go quicker at the 32-kilometre mark, or holding a pace which is taking its toll on its body. We're now at the 70-minute mark, so less than an hour's running to go. It's amazing how quickly it flies, Troopy, just to see how the race unfolds, the early stages with the core group together, but the fact that we are now down to a group of probably 5 potential races. We'd be looking for a 25-kilometre split potentially in the next 3 or 4, and
they'll be coming up to halfway.
Yes, yes. So we'll see if we can bring you splits on the women, which will be very interesting to see. So we had the women had split a little bit with Takanaka Nagami. We hadn't really seen any splits on the Ethiopian Haji, so she may well have slipped right off the pace there. So it'd be interesting to see those splits on the women's half marathon. So we're looking at Shigeki, the Japanese runner. He's slowed noticeably there. No sign of Kawauchi and Yamamoto, the other Japanese runners, although I suspect they will be in front of him. Shigeki is really sort of a 2:13, 2:14 runner at best, so he will not feature at all. But terrific to see so many Japanese runners here. The fact that the event is growing in notoriety. I guess the Japanese engagement with the marathon here at the Gold Coast Troopy hit a massive boom through the 80s. The Japanese tourism boom was really reflected in the Japanese numbers flying here into the Gold Coast.
And just to give the viewers an indication on what's transpiring in the women's race, Tanaka is still leading, and she's gone through 20k in 69 minutes and 31 seconds, and her 5k splits have been 17:31, 17:19, 17:23 and 17:16. So to run 17:16 from 15k to 20k and that be her quickest 5k shows that all of a sudden she's now putting herself in that range to run low 226. She said 226 to 227. She was very specific about that. To be running her fastest 5k split, as I said, from 15 to 20, shows that she's on for a really good time.
So the race record here at the Gold Coast in the women's event, 2:27.17. So we're there and about. So it'll be interesting to see if they can hold that pace. We're getting a little bit of picture breakup through some of the more congested parts of the course there, but we've still got that core group of 5 or 6 lead runners along with another 2 paces, and will be interesting to see if the paces can take us certainly through to 25 kilometres, and can they hold it through to 30 kilometres. Jeffrey Eggleston, no sign of him for quite a little while, but we weren't expecting he would feature in that regard.
And just to give the viewers a bit of an indication, we're not quite getting the exact splits coming through to us at the moment, so we can't go beyond, obviously, Limo and Tanaka that we know are leading the races to give their splits. So as soon as we get that sorted out, we'll be able to run down to who's in the top 5, who's in the top 10 of both the men and the women.
Joined in the commentary box by Brett Larner very shortly, but we'll be going out to Mossy and Robbo out on the Gold Coast Marathon course. Let's see who the guys have got out there for us.
How are you, mate?
Sorry.
How are you, mate?
Conditions out here, Robbo.
All the nothing on the splits.
We
They're all
talk about this
screwed
one
up.
being the best
Okay.
marathon in the world. I tell you what, though, it's not just about the elites.
Yep.
In behind us, the ASICS Half Marathon. Plenty of people achieving their lifetime goals, mate.
Yeah, well, you're seeing the footage of the marathoners out there on the course. Here we are at the finish line, as you said, and the half marathoners, they're coming across the line, Mossy, beaming smiles ear to ear. Some of them have never run this distance before, and today they have ticked that box. They're getting their medals, they're getting their shirts, they're getting their post-race nutrition. competition, and they are absolutely beaming. They'll be telling all their friends and family, workmates about this on Monday.
Well, speaking of family, we know there's plenty of family in behind us here. How electric is the atmosphere on the finish line?
Oh, look, it is. There's nothing like it. What have we got? About 80 metres to the final straight here. As you come around that final straight, you look up, you see the time, you hear the announcers, you get spurred on by the crowd, Mossy. And when you come through, it's about sharing those stories. These guys have had a taste of it. And very soon, Mossy, crossing that finish line, we're going to see the leading male and female marathoners. We're going to be right here to cover it. It's going to be absolutely exciting to see.
Absolutely. Now, have you got any tips, mate, for the winners?
Look, mate, everyone's a winner today, Mossy. If you're here doing the run, whatever distance, you're all winners. And, mate, we're just lucky enough to be here in the beautiful Gold Coast sun, as you said. Mossy, you're a redhead. You need to probably get some sunscreen on soon, mate. Maybe we'll have some zinc cream on for your next shot.
Well, here we are at the finish line. Sensational stuff for the ASICS Half Marathon. Can't wait to see how the elites go. But look at everyone behind us. They're having a blast.
Mossy and Robbo having a lot of fun out there. Those guys always do. So we're looking at the lead pack of still... So we've got 6 runners there.
Yep, 6.
Somebody's come back on, perhaps. So we welcome to the commentary box here Brett Larner from Japan Running News. Brett, our expert in all things Japanese running. Brett, not surprised to see the Japanese women dominating and Takaneka doing so well out there. She certainly is in winning form, perhaps record-breaking form.
Absolutely. When we talked to her before the race, she sounded very confident. She said, she's been training for this specifically since she made her marathon debut in March, and training has been good. Her half marathon performances have been good, so she's definitely seems like she's here to set the course record.
And good recent form as well for her, and that obviously, I guess, is key in that regard. Kawauchi, I know you know him well. He's halfway split. So what are we looking at? 62... So that must have been through 20K, 62, 36.
Yep, 15K, 46, 16. So he's obviously tired, but he
Yep.
has come in not in great shape. He had an ankle injury, I think, but the 14:49 through the first 5K may have been a little bit of the device that might have brought him unstuck, do you think?
He has had some trouble this year. He twisted an ankle in late December, and that's kind of turned into a long-lasting series of injuries. So he's certainly not 100%. But I think looking at the 20K split, that looks not too far off what we would have expected before the race. He's talking maybe 2:12-ish. So I think it's. The first 5K split was surprising, but the current projection looks not bad.
Logic would dictate you get an ankle injury, you take a bit of time off, but not with Kawauchi. So what is that mindset for him, Brett, that the logical side he doesn't succumb to? He still continues to race and train hard.
I would say there are 2 parts to it. One part, he's out to challenge conventional wisdom. He said one of his goals is to challenge the conventional wisdom of the marathon world, to see if that's really conventional wisdom. And as this is the first kind of serious injury that he's had, he's challenging the conventional wisdom of recovery. He also feels that if he's committed to running a race, it would be wrong for him to back out of it. He feels like he has a moral commitment to races.
We might have some more accurate splits here through 25 kilometres. So they're going through 1:15.56. So that has slowed a little bit. We've lost a little bit of time there. That probably puts us back on 2:08 pace. Is that?
Yeah, that's what we're looking at the moment.
Yeah.
So, but again, we talked about obviously how fast that first 10 kilometres was, and then what was going to happen between 10 and 20. So we're down now. You can see the guys it's a little bit of a yo-yo effect. There are guys at the back that are working hard to get on. They get on, then someone at the front seems to push the pace. They drop off. So I don't really expect to have the 2 Africans that are at the back of the group now to really figure prominently, because they're using so much energy, and we haven't even we've just got past 25 kilometres. So there's still a lot of racing. There's 17 kilometres to go. There's the openness of heading out onto Runaway Bay. Limo, we know the Africans can run, but look at the sweat that's perspiring off them. So obviously the weather is starting to get a little warmer. So it's very rare to see Africans look like they're under a little bit of duress, but a couple in that pack certainly do.
Of course, it's summer in Japan for the Japanese runners. Brett, would you expect they would be handling the heat a little bit better than the Africans?
Absolutely. I think they'll be very happy with these conditions. Very happy.
So Mungara is still in the lead group there. This is extraordinary. I love this guy's story because I'm an over 40. A couple of you guys as well giving me hope as well. But the fact that the World Masters Marathon record holder, Kenneth Mungara, is there as well. That's fantastic. He's obviously in terrific form.
Well, he's worked hard to get on, and he's done that probably 3 or 4 times. But we're looking now at 7 athletes. We know 2 of those guys are pacemakers, so there's 5. I think that's going to be the 5 that are now going to be seeing the race out from now to the finish. Just going back to you, Brett.
Yeah.
How your involvement with Yuki, you're his agent. How did that relationship come about?
Well, I'm not formally his agent. As a government employee, he's not allowed to have external employment contracts, and so he doesn't have contractual relationships with sponsors. He doesn't accept appearance fees for races. I don't have a formal relationship with him at all. I've known him since well before he became Yuki Kawauchi. He used to be. When he was a teenager, he used to come down to the local track where I trained, and I had seen him there, so I knew him from that. And just as he's kind of grown, we've stayed in touch. And when he got to the point where he had his big breakthrough and wanted to race overseas, he called me up and asked for help. So I'm happy to help him when he asks.
And is he the only athlete that you're assisting and helping, or are there other Japanese athletes you're...
I do help out some others. I have known Arata Fujiwara, who's a London Olympian 207 marathoner, who ran here last year. I help him. I do some work with a high-level university half marathon in Japan in taking some of the top performers from there to the New York City half marathon to have a chance to run against some of the best in the world when they're still young and have the fire burning. And we're seeing the benefit from that, where 2 of the guys who have taken to New York make up 2 of the 4 members of the long distance team for the World Championships this year were guys who had that experience running in New York. So that's one of the things I'm most interested in, is trying to help the really burgeoning college scene there, those guys to really get the experience they need to take it to the next level.
And your background running-wise, because we knew you before, obviously helping Yuki.
Yep.
We see you do the Japanese running news.
That's
you're
right.
great because your translation obviously is taking it from Japanese to English. But
Yep.
what about yourself? Do you come from a running background?
I've always been a runner. I ran in junior high school, university, but very embarrassingly slow. Nothing professional, nothing high level at all. Just it's something I've always loved. My mother was a talented runner, and she had kind of got me into it. And just when I moved to Japan for reasons completely unrelated to running, I was really captivated by the running scene there, and that's translated into starting the Japan Running News website in 2007 to coincide with the Osaka World Championships, to try to make an outlet for English language information about the really exciting and thriving Japanese running scene that is largely unknown outside Japan.
So while the African runners are dominating here in the lead pack, probably going through about 27, 28 kilometres, we've got some splits on Yamamoto and Kawauchi. So Kawauchi has actually slipped behind Yamamoto. It was the other way around. So Yamamoto...
Kawauchi's 11 seconds.
Kawauchi, the other way around.
Yep.
Yeah, Kawauchi 10 seconds, 11 seconds in front of Yamamoto. Brett,
Yep.
The Africans are dominating now, but there is this massive sort of undercurrent, this tsunami of Japanese running coming through. We were talking yesterday about extraordinary numbers in Japanese college running. Don't know if you've heard this, Troopy, but at the recent National University Half Championships, sub 66 minutes for the men's half marathon, 265 guys broke 66 minutes, and they're still missing some of the top runners. There is this groundswell of great runners coming through, Brett. You expect to see big things in coming years between now and certainly Tokyo Olympics 2020.
Everything's pointing that way. If you look at the trend in the numbers, the growth at the university level right now is astonishing, really, as those kinds of numbers without the top group of 40 or 50 college guys, and you still have 265 guys running 66 minutes. I don't know how many people broke 66 minutes here today, but certainly on a different order. Yeah. In that race, also I think under 70 minutes they had, I believe it was 643, well over 600 people breaking 70 minutes. So this, people look at that and they say, okay, if there are so many young Japanese guys running these incredible times, why aren't they performing better at the marathon? Why don't we see more Japanese marathoners dominating? And that's a long topic of conversation, but I really believe that this kind of trend is something that's ongoing. It's really only the last 4 or 5 years we've seen these kinds of numbers, and that certainly once these guys start to do the marathon, like our half marathon winner today, Takahiro Deki, once they start to do the marathon seriously, we're certainly going to be seeing more Japanese guys running, 207, hopefully 206.
And of course, a bit of an extraordinary move by the Japanese government in terms of putting up $1 million prize money for someone to break the Japanese national record, which is 2 hours 7.
206.16.
206.16.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
a tough record, certainly quicker than the Australian record, but there's no reason that shouldn't be broken. Why do they think it's necessary to put up that sort of prize money?
They really want it to happen.
Pretty simple, isn't it?
Trying to get more runners into that
it's
next level again.
Exactly. It's a very long-lasting record. It's stood for over 10 years, I believe, and they certainly have guys who look capable of running that. And for whatever reason, they've kind of stalled at the 208 level for a few years. They have had 2 guys run 207 in the last 3 years, I believe. So like a step in that direction, but they're not getting the numbers they want running 206, 207. And I think the timing of this is really good. As we said, the university runners really coming up, moving towards the marathon now ahead of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. And they want to time this so that they have the front of that wave having the extra incentive to try to take that step to running 206.
So we're looking at the a very solid core lead pack still of 7 runners through there, Troopy, including our 2 pacemakers. That's good that they've gone beyond 25 kilometres. We'll be coming up to 30 kilometres. We're probably at around 28, 29 or something like that. They've come through Surfers Paradise, so they're now on their northward journey and will come through the start-finish area probably in the next 3 or 4 minutes. So
they're about 5 minutes from 30 kilometres, and they're still pushing the pace. You can see Mongara, he's sitting at the back there. This is probably the 10th time that he's been off, he's been on, he's been off, he's been on. So once we get up over the bridge and we go past that start-finish area, expect it to drop down to probably around about 3 people. Once the pacemakers drop, I'm expecting maybe Limo or even Rudo, who's still sitting there, one of those 2 guys to start to push the pace.
Now, it will be interesting. These guys are thinking first and foremost about winning rather than necessarily a race record. I guess that's always a bonus. So it does become a genuine race to finish first, but then it's a matter of who's going to push who and how many there will be. See if we can take it below that magic mark of 209.14. So we're turning through, this is the main beach area. We'll be turning back onto the Gold Coast Highway probably in the next couple of 100 metres, and then it's about 1 kilometre to the race start-finish area there.
And just as we've said that, we've got Mongara dropping off again. The women should have gone through 25 kilometres, so we'll get the splits for the females to be able to give that to the viewers.
So given that Mongara has been on and off again, do you think that's the end of him? Mongara, if he's fallen away for the 3rd or 4th time?
He's back on again. I mean, he is really
Oh, so he's still there.
toughing it
Okay,
out. You can see him, he drops off 10, 15 metres, works hard to get back on. So once the pacemakers drop, that's when the race is going to start. At the moment, the pacemakers are doing the job. People are sitting off them. But as soon as they drop, then it becomes, all right, when do I surge? One of them will make a decisive surge that will just completely open it up. It's whether they can hold that surge to go on to victory, or whether they may have spent a little bit too much energy in the early parts of the race that allows someone that has been dropped to be able to run through.
So looking at the 25 kilometre split, Takanaka 1:27.07, so that's still...
She's still on that 2:27.
2:27, yep,
Yep. She's running
2:27.17.
really well.
So the record, of course, held by Akiba from 2 years ago, Brett. The Japanese women particularly love this race, don't they? Their tradition is probably even stronger here than the men.
Absolutely. I think the 4 of your last 5 women's winners here have been Japanese women. Yeah, it's once a race has a reputation as a race where Japanese athletes perform well, you do tend to see them coming back. And since there is a legacy of women running well here, particularly course record wins, that's certainly drawing in larger numbers of women than men.
In terms of the participation numbers, so we have 53% women through all of the events here at the Gold Coast Airport Marathon over the weekend, from 2 kilometres through to the marathon. Numbers of Japanese women are commensurate with the men, are they? Is there much discrepancy?
At the elite level?
Well, even Japan, yeah, I guess elite as well as everyday runners.
There's still, I would say, still largely male-dominated. But one of the interesting things at the amateur level is that since the start of the Tokyo Marathon in 2007, there's been a huge explosion in the amateur population of runners. People really starting to run for the first time, and by and large, the largest demographic in that is younger women, say like women under 40, who view running as an expression of self. Maybe it's really inspiring to see.
So we're looking a little bit of a fracture potentially in the lead group here. A bit hard to pick two of the Africans who have fallen off. So we've got our two pace runners still. So we've come through Main Beach. We will be turning onto the Gold Coast Highway. That's probably this loop that we're seeing.
17:34 for that 5K split from 20 to 25, which was her slowest 5K split.
Yep.
Considering that she was 17:16 up to 20K.
Right.
She just dropped 18 seconds in that 5K. So hopefully she's regrouping, and that's not a sign that she's starting to fatigue and get tired.
But it's still a good pace. That's still sort of 3:30 pace, isn't it?
Very close to 3:30.
Yeah,
I don't see any problem there. Yeah.
So Takanaka has a something like almost a 2-minute lead over her countrywoman Manami Kamitanida. You're the expert on the pronunciations, Brett.
It's a beautiful name, Manami Kamitanida. Say that one quickly.
He rolled it off beautifully,
yeah,
didn't he?
Yeah.
They do. That's the difference between being a resident in Japan for, 15 years?
15 years now. Yeah, in August it'll be 15 years. Yeah.
So a little bit of a decisive move in the lead men's group here as they come across the bridge
30K.
over the... Yep. So coming up to 30K here? Or have we been through 30K?
No, they'll be coming up to 30K very, very soon.
All right, so we've dropped off. That pace has slipped a little bit. We wouldn't want it to be much more than 1:32 as we come through 30K if we're looking to set a new race record here. Will be interesting to see. So we've got our two pacemakers there. We've got Sila Limo, the 2014 winner, who was looking fantastic.
30K.
There we go, okay.
1:31.15.
Right.
One of those pacemakers is now moving to the side, and I think he's contemplating, do I stop or do I try and put another 1 or 2 kilometres on this? Ruto and Limo they've looked fantastic from the start. So, we're going to see them obviously go all the way through.
The surprise for me there is Hidru, so his PB is 2:10.18. He is absolutely on their hammer there. His PB is a recent one from this year, 2015. You're looking at the pacer there, Asias Bain from Eritrea. He's done fantastic to hang in there. Very small, compact runner. That is obviously a bit of an advantage, overshadowed there by Ruto, who absolutely towers over him like a African warrior. So we've got a core group there. So maybe if Bain is hanging on, we shouldn't write him off as a competitor and potentially still being a bit of a force. But he's had to do the front running. He's had to do a lot of hard work. That would take its toll.
I think he's hanging in there to a 32K. Obviously, the first pacemaker has moved aside, but this is where the race is going to get really, really hard. You've got to go up over the hill past that start-finish area, and then you've got to head out to Runaway Bay where you're quite exposed to the elements, and that early pace of being under 2.6 through the first 10K, I think is where you're going to see, obviously, a little bit of hurt with these guys as they try to close out their last few kilometres into the finish line.
It's a fascinating race, isn't it, Brett? And we do have a race of 4 runners here, 4 Africans. We're seeing Ruto look around there just a little bit, whether one of these guys, the hill we have seen in the past, there's a little bit of a rise coming up.
Just past 31.
Exactly,
yep.
yeah. So that is interesting because that can be a point at which somebody seeks to use that to their advantage. Interesting to see if they use it.
Okay. And I've just noticed Kenneth Mangara is also dropped off the pack, but I believe he's the next person behind this lead group of 4 still.
Yep. Yes.
So we'll see if he comes back.
So Limo and Ruto, the 2 Kenyans there, going side by side, but we still have the Eritrean behind there, Hidru, and our pace runner also from Eritrea, Asias Bain. So 2 Kenyans, 2 Eritreans. I don't think we've seen these sort of composition of a lead pack before. Bain just having a bit of a look around. I don't know if he was looking for his fellow pacemaker or seeing how far the 5th person was behind him. That could factor into things in terms, Lee, of whether he decides to stick around. If these guys start to get
that hill, down the other side, he's hanging in.
He is. It almost becomes a a point at which he decides it's the point of no return. I'm either going to head out here or I'll just step off the track. Let's go over to Mossy and Robbo, who were with Pat Carroll as the runners approach the 31 kilometre mark. Mossy, Robbo and Pat Carroll, over to you guys. Great atmosphere.
On pace to go sub 2:10.
Unbelievable. We got, looking at the splits here, we got 8 people under the course record pace at 30k, which was just down the road. And I'm standing out here on the course at the 31k mark, and you know, it's the best conditions I've ever experienced on the Gold Coast. I'm standing here in a t-shirt and I'm a little bit cold. I can almost put a warm top on at the moment. So I'd say at the moment it's probably about 15 degrees standing here on the course. So with these guys with only, you know, about 10k to go, you know, the chance of a 2:08 marathon's looking pretty good.
And we're just seeing as they come up behind us, looks like we've got a pack of 4 here. Defending champion Sila Limo in the mix there. And with the pacemakers, and there's the hairdresser from outside Nairobi. Tell us about Kenneth.
Kenneth Mungara, number 6, Kenneth Mungara. And I think Kenneth is coming up the hill now.
He's just gone past us.
Just past us now, so Kenneth Mungara, he's my pick for a win. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kenneth Mungara comes through and takes out the Gold Coast Airport Marathon. And my money's on Kenneth Mungara.
So 30Ks, mates, and we're looking at a 2:08.24 predicted finish. So the course record, the Australian all-comers record, do you think with that pack there, that'll go a long way to helping someone get under that?
Well, I think so, because I mean those guys now, they're very conscious of you know, they got to start making a bit of a break if they're going to get that. You know, let's face it, they want to win. They want to get a few dollars also. There's a bit of money up for grabs. So you know, there's certainly that pace is not going to slow. It's not going to slow, I can tell you now. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised that pace just picks up a little bit.
Well, as you said here, mate, beautiful conditions. You're pretty much a local here. I'll tell you what, mate, when we look up into the sky, tell us, mate, what's so special about Gold Coast?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a major tourism destination in Australia, and, you know, a lot of people come here for the Gold Coast Airport Marathon, you know, just to experience the great beaches and resorts that we have here, and our theme parks. But, you know, it's just in the course itself, the Gold Coast Airport Marathon course, it's flat as a tack. When you get a couple of bumps, I mean, we're standing here. If you can look behind,
at altitude,
you look behind us. This is as high as it gets. That's the hill, believe it or not. That's, you know, it's not Boston, I can tell you now. But you know, it's just a beautiful place to come to, and perfect conditions for running today. Best conditions I've ever seen on the Gold Coast for the marathon.
Now, Pat, you've had a busy weekend, mate. You haven't quite run a marathon, but you did the 10K yesterday. You've done the half. You've got the shirt on here.
I did.
How are you holding up for an old bloke, mate?
Well, I'm going okay, and I've also got the corporate hospitality. So, you know, I've got some croissants and chocolate eclairs waiting for me in the corporate hospitality tent, so I'm looking forward to that. But no, it's been great. We had the Legends lunch yesterday, and it's great to get together with the likes of Rob De Castella, Steve Monaghetti, Lee Troop, and Benita Willis, and you know, the Gold Coast Airport Marathon do a great job bringing a lot of legends here, and you know, it's great. We had Ryan Hall pacing the 1:30 in the half marathon today. I paced 1 hour 40 minutes, and I really enjoyed that, and got people across the line in about 1:29, and you know, it's just great to see so many people here. Record numbers here in the marathon, the largest marathon field ever assembled on the Gold Coast. So, you know, it's just great. The weekend has been sensational, and especially, you know, I really enjoyed the lunch we had yesterday, and we had a record number at the lunch. So it's just been a bonza of a weekend.
Now, mate, you're part of this elite sub 2:10 club. 4 of those yesterday at the Legends lunch, mate. What have we got to do in Australia to put ourselves back up there on the podium?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, Michael Shelley's almost there. I mean, Michael's a phenomenal runner, and, you know, Commonwealth Games gold medalist last year. So I think, you know, I would like to see a lot of the top guys race more. I would like to see them, you know, running 10Ks and half marathons competitively and race more. Cross-country races, I mean, look at the likes of Steve Monaghetti and Deke. I mean, they did a lot of cross-country running and a lot of road races. You know, I think the secret is, you know, just strive to get your PB, you know, on the track at 5K, 10K, half marathon, and keep your long run work going, and just really become PB possessed, and you know, get that half marathon down really fast and that'll translate into a marathon. But I think I would like to see a lot of the top guys, race a bit more on the road.
Pat, I've heard the secret is getting one of these things, the headband. I know back in the day, the 85 Gold Coast Airport Marathon, you raced it here, you got your win there that day in the headband with the big hair.
Yeah.
You're obviously a bit of a fan of the headbanded approach.
I got no hair now. But yeah, I actually was an innovator. Pat Carroll was the original headband man, and because we both had the same name, Pat and Pat, well, I also went on with the headband. So I saw Pat one time at a function, and Pat said to me, "Pat, I think you should start wearing a headband." So I said, "Okay, Pat." And so it was great back in the day. And
you raced without a shirt too,
without
mate.
a shirt. I was very buffed. I was fresh off my karate career, and I was very buffed back then. And I was probably the same weight I am now, actually, and close on 80 kilos.
Mate, you're a risk taker. I'm a fellow ginger, very pale as well.
Yeah.
Mate, you didn't mind getting out there. Obviously, you ran so fast that you didn't have to worry about the slip-slop slap.
Well, that was back in the day. There's no slip-slop back in the day. Back then, back in those days, if you peeled, you were a man. You're a man. If your skin was coming off, you were a man.
Well, I'm concerned for you two blokes because we've been in this sun now for a little while. We might have to get you both undercover and get the sunscreen on. The corporate hospitality might suit you nicely.
Yeah.
But thanks.
Flat white, coming my way.
There we go. They'll get an order. And thanks as always for having a chat to us here at Heartbreak Hill.
Great. I hope everyone out there is enjoying the telecast, and it's great to. Hopefully, we'll get a 2:08 marathon here on the Gold Coast.
Well, there you go.
Mossy Robbo
There you
and
go,
Pat
back up to
Carroll,
the studio with the
fantastic
boys, the Gold
guys out
Coast
there
Airport.
capturing some of the atmosphere as we see a significant race move. Brett Larner, we are seeing Sila Limo, who just looked fantastic, make a move. So he was the one who put in the surge. He's dragged a couple of his countrymen with him. I think it's the other two Kenyans with him. So interesting to see if this could be the race-making move.
Definitely, he, as we had kind of suggested there, he came back on the hill. Mangara came back on the hill, and actually, as we're speaking now, it looks like he's gone to the front. That's unexpected. It's a very exciting move.
Munga, this is just extraordinary. I cannot believe this guy is still there. Before we talk about how these guys are going, before we let you go, Brett, Yamamoto and Kawichi, the Japanese runners, Yamamoto has a lead over Kawichi, both sort of looking to run around 2:11, 2:12.
2:12 looks on. Depends how it goes with the last part. I would certainly expect Kawichi to get there. Yamamoto has moved ahead of him. Last year he ran overseas twice. 2:10.59 in Vienna and 2:12.49 in Berlin. So he's consistent at that level racing overseas. So yeah, it looks like a 2:12 race for the two of them.
So they could well be still top 10, but it'll be interesting to see if any of those Japanese can come back to these lead group of 5 African runners. Thanks very much for joining us, Brett, and
Pleasure to be
we're
back.
looking
Thank you.
forward to having you involved in future coverages. So, Troopy, what we're seeing here is we're normally used to seeing Kenyan versus Ethiopian in terms of a trans-African contest. Kenya versus Eritrea this time round, with the 2 Eritrean runners just slipping off the 3 lead Kenyans there.
Well, I don't want to make any more bold predictions because Mangara has been amazing. He's been up and down probably about 15 times in this race, and now he's gone to the front. So we talked, and I've talked about this quite a lot, the fact that the pace was so quick, and there were some of those guys that just weren't sitting right on that front row. He's really planned this really, really well. I still like Lima. He's just so strong. But, the person that is having a day out at the moment is Mangara for sure.
Extraordinary. We can't pretend to think that that's an efficient way of running in terms of surging back and forth, but potentially beneficial. Is it, Troopy, because he might have conserved a bit of energy, but then has he used that conserved energy in catching up to the Greuse? Is he revenue neutral in that regard?
Well, that is a really good point to bring up because the guys at the front are obviously pushing, backing off, and sometimes when you keep continually doing that, you become fatigued a little bit easier. He may have just been allowing those guys every time they kept pushing to go and then just rolling up to them a little bit more conservative. I mean, he's obviously older. And sometimes when you're older, you're smarter. And he might not have been
Thanks
able
for
to...
that. We'll take that.
Yeah, maybe he realises, and, I can attest to this, that you can't turn the legs over really, really quickly. Like when you're younger and you're going great, when someone surges, you can respond within, half a second and get on. When you get a bit older, you can't actually turn those legs over a little bit quicker. So this may actually play into his hands where he's just let them do that all the time and then he's rolled up to them at his own level and his own pace where he feels a little bit more comfortable rather than trying to respond to that surge emerge so quickly.
Sila Limo still looking very relaxed. I just love the way he runs, Limo. He's got that low arm carry, very efficient. So we've got the 3 Africans in there. Ruto, the tallest of them, who's just dropped between the middle of them there, between Mungara and Limo. It'd be interesting now. The challenge is, and the interest will be Benita Willis joining us. When does someone make a move? When do they feel that they have to take a gamble? Have you got any thoughts on when you would advise, when you expect one of these guys to go?
Well, I mean, when there's 3 together like that, I think you've got to be feeling very strong to go with further than 5K to go into the race. So I think they're going to be backing their speed at the end, but they look comfortable to be running together at the moment. And certainly, if you want to go a long way out, as long as they are from there now to the finish, you've got to be going now, and you've got to get a gap. And if you're not confident you can get that gap, you just stay running in the pack there. But your body's breaking down at this point, and that it just depends on their mental strength now. They've all done the training, and they all know that they can do it, but it's the one that knows they can do it when they're hurting.
Now, looking, Benita, at the 25-kilometre splits from the women, as we've been saying since long before halfway, Takanaka, the Japanese runner, she's almost 2 minutes in front of what is a Japanese top 5. So, interesting race unfolding there.
Yeah, I mean, Takanyaka, she's winning by a mile now, and I've just been chatting to her manager, Brendan Riley, who's over in the States, and yeah, he's really following this race, and he said he met with Ryan McDonald to get Takanyaka into this race over at LA Marathon. So she's having a brilliant run, and I think she's going to continue on with her form and just stretch her lead as we go into the final 17K now.
So we'd love to see a women's race record as well as a men's race record. Have we been through 35 kilometres there, Troopy? I'm not sure.
We'll be coming up to 35 kilometres very, very soon, within the next sort of 30 to 45 seconds, I reckon.
Yeah, so if we come through there 46 and a half, that will still put us on well and truly on race record pace. Are we almost sub 2:8 looking at that?
We're still on 2:8 at this point. We're about to find out as they come across that map, which should be very, very soon.
So we've got 3 runners here. We've got Sila Limo, the 2014 winner. Looks as if he's trying to throw in one more surge, a good 7 kilometres from home. Dennis Ruto from Kenya, and what I think has become a commentary favourite, Mungara, who looks as if he is just struggling to hang on to this significant surge by Sila Limo.
1:46.36 through 35 kilometres.
Yeah, so look, that's still on 2:08 pace. We're still on race record. Mungara, is he gone? I'm not sure that he is. I'm not going to write him off until about 42.1 kilometres. Interesting. So they're grabbing drinks there. Bit of sharing of drinks going on between Limo and Ruto there. But this is a race. Make no mistake, there is not much camaraderie to be read into that. This is a race that both of these gentlemen want to win, with the $20,000 first prize up for grabs, and it drops away pretty quickly for second prize. I think it's $8,000 for second. So some significant prize money gap between first and second. So Limo and Ruto, the 2 Kenyan runners. Mungara of Kenya back in third there. So the race is well and truly on by now, with the Eritreans slipping back. Hard to see those 2 guys coming back from here, Troopy.
Look, it is, but one thing about the marathon is you don't know once you get into this last 10 kilometres when the wheels are going to completely fall off. We don't know exactly someone that might be on that cusp of actually falling apart, or someone that's still got a little bit of energy that they've been able to conserve. I've liked Limo the whole time. I feel between him and Ruto, they've actually worked together. Their body language through the majority of this race seems that they've, been sharing drinks, been assisting each other, trying to make sure that they've got a straight line to be able to run. So I think with these 2, it's going to certainly come down to probably the last couple of kilometres.
So what will be interesting to see if we do get a back-to-back winner here. Limo very much in the picture. He would become the first back-to-back runner since Fred Kiprop went back-to-back in 98-99. So that'd be a new chapter in the new century of Gold Coast Airport Marathon history. These guys look terrific. There's really not much drop in their form, Benita, is there? We can't read too much there. There is fatigue obviously showing on their faces, but in terms of their form, I don't see these guys looking too distressed there.